Hmm. Talk about your podcast. Actually, I listened to your recent episode with Doctor.
I've been to Sugar.
Shigel. Yeah,
Yeah,
fantastic,
she's
really
lovely.
fantastic
Thank
episode.
you.
And also speaking about the does social media impact on mental health, which is something that I see you do a lot of work on in your website as well.
Yeah.
How did you find the episode? It was fantastic for me. How did you find it?
It was great. It's something that I've discussed. I do quite a lot of work on Instagram, and I, chat to my followers quite a lot. I don't have that many, to be honest. I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm like an influencer or anything like that. I only have like 1,200 followers on Instagram. But I've got a really good community on Instagram where everybody does like to discuss different topics and they're really interested in things. So I had put a poll up a couple of weeks prior about what people thought about Instagram filters. So
Mm,
I just thought, wouldn't it be great to get a professional to talk about, a psychologist or a psychiatrist to talk about the effect it has on our mental health and our psyche, basically. Dr. Parvinder Shergill kindly answered my call for that,
mm,
and we sat down to the podcast. So I thought it was great from a professional perspective to find
mm,
out just how much that really does affect our day-to-day life and our mental health.
mm. And even before you put the poll up as well, was this something that you wanted to talk about for a while as well with someone?
Yeah, because I mean, I've been there myself, where, I think when I was a little bit younger, I would use a lot of these. When Snapchat first came out, I think I mentioned this in the podcast. When Snapchat first came out, I would use filters a lot. And it did get to the point where it did almost become an addiction for me to use these filters
Hmm.
because, you start to look at your face and you're like, okay, well, my nose doesn't look that small without a filter, or when the filter comes off, you always hear those jokes about when the filter moves off, you think, whoa, like that's not me, but
Yeah.
that is me. And it's been something I've wanted to talk about for years. And I definitely want to do more research and more work on it because it's affected me personally at one point.
Yeah. I mean, has your kind of outlook on social media changed since your talk with Dr. Pavinda at all?
Um, I wouldn't say it's changed, but it's just given me more awareness. Again, it's kind of like a lengthy journey of research that I'm doing to understand it a little bit more. I wouldn't say it's changed because I was already aware of how it does affect people, being a woman as well. I've got a lot of female friends, obviously, and we do talk about this quite a lot. Photos and how we feel and our mental health and how we look in pictures, or just being on, even for my friends who have businesses, I discuss it with them. If they use social media a lot, how do you switch off? Where do you find that time to just relax? And you'll probably know yourself from doing a lot on social media. Sometimes you do just need to
Hmm.
unplug and go and spend like 2 hours watching TV or something. So it hasn't changed, but I definitely say my awareness has become greater through
Hmm.
speaking to her, definitely.
Yeah. How do you unplug personally? You said what you watch TV as well. Is there anything else that you do personally to kind of just move away from all the social media?
I find it quite difficult. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be honest. I find it quite difficult because again, I do a lot of content. So again, you're always on your laptop, or I need to use social media for inspiration or if I want to check something. So I do find it hard. It's actually this month I just took a kind of month break. I'm slowly getting back into it. But I did get to the point where I said, actually I think you need just like a break and not worry, because I really worry when it's probably my own anxiety, but I really worry when I'm not replying to people, or I reply back late, and then you want to engage, but at the same time, you've got your real life to live, and
Hmm.
so I do find it difficult. But when I unplug, yeah, I do just like to maybe sit and read up on articles that I find interesting, or research things, or watch TV, and or hang out with my friends, and yeah.
Hmm. I know that on your website as well, you mentioned obviously a couple of other bits as well, which I want to get into.
Yeah.
But one of the things you mentioned was one of the things. Another thing was you posted the question: Is our love affair with social media really coming to an end? Which was
Yeah.
released obviously the
Hmm.
week after Caroline Flack's passing.
Yes, it
Um,
was.
yeah. Do you feel like what's your comments state on this situation? Do you feel like people are losing their love for social media, or do you feel like it's still as popular as ever?
Well, like I said, it's definitely been a journey with me. I mean, that was written, like you said, almost a year ago after Caroline Flack's passing.
Mm,
So it's been a bit of a journey understanding it, and I'm going to continue to do more work to try and understand it. I don't think maybe now that we're losing our love for social media, because it's a staple in our lives now. Like we need it. We almost need it. You need it if you have to run a business. You need it to catch up with your friends. You need it to catch up on the news. Even now, you need social media. But I do think people are becoming more aware and more balanced about how too much of a good thing I like to think about it as. You know, I think people are now becoming aware of, okay, I've spent 8 hours today on social media and maybe it is getting too much. And they're now finding that kind of social media life balance. And it's maybe not as much of a need, even though it is. I don't know if I've explained that
No,
very well.
you really have there, because
You know what I mean? Yeah.
yeah, of course I do, because you also mentioned in the same column, sorry, that you mentioned that it's clear that society is irritated and something needs to change. However,
Yeah.
is it the ill management of social media platforms at fault, or is it our own personal relationship with social media which is impacting us? What do you think? Is that still true today in your mind? Do you think, or do you think it's kind of changed slightly recently?
I think me and Dr. Parvinder Shergill did touch on this a little bit. She's been doing amazing work alongside Parliament to look at regulation and how and whose responsibility it is to regulate social media. Now, I do think there needs to be more regulation on social media, especially for young people. I touched on this a little bit as well in the podcast. When I was younger, even, we didn't really have social media to the extent that you have it now. So I think we had Bebo or something, and that was the first mention of cyberbullying, was like Bebo and MySpace, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now, especially now that we're all very image orientated and focused. But I also think it is a personal responsibility, and again, we touched on that, and Dr. Parvinder made a really great point. If it is affecting you, you should recognise that and maybe remove yourself for a little while. I think it's a dual responsibility. I do think we need to look at more regulation, but I also think as people, we need to be more self-aware of what our own triggers are. And like me, it was getting a little bit much for me last month. I was constantly replying to people and then trying to do my content and trying to make content and working 2 jobs at the same time. So I did just say, okay, right, it doesn't matter if your engagement goes down. I also think, just a point as well, I also think a good point to make is it's, for me, the ownership does also lie with these social media tech bosses. So they're making it harder now for us to switch off. I don't know if you saw The Social Dilemma.
I really want to watch that, actually. I haven't seen it
You
yet,
need to watch it.
Yeah.
It honestly, it makes you, it stays with you. It's one of those ones that just stays with you. But I think it is a fault of them as well, in the sense that, like on Instagram, for example, they'll drop your engagement if you're not constantly online. And that, to me, is just, they don't realize, or maybe they do, but they don't realize how much of an effect that's having on people's mental health, you know, because if you're seeing, you're like, no one's looking at my stuff, and, you know, like, why is that person getting, and it creates this competition, unnecessary competition with others and with yourself, that's maybe a little bit unnecessary.
I really need to watch the documentary because I've heard so much
It's
about
amazing.
it. Yeah.
So good.
And does it ever mention actually what the future does hold for social media? I know you see this is part of a staple of life now, which is a good and bad thing in a way. Obviously, everything has good and bad points, obviously, but in the documentary, does it ever mention what the future does hold for social media in a sense?
I think, if I remember correctly, at the end, because what I thought was great about it is they interviewed actual ex-employees of these social media apps. So they had all the insider knowledge. They knew exactly how it worked. They knew exactly what the aims of the companies were or are. I don't think anyone knows. That's the thing I picked up from it. I think everyone agreed at the end that, like we're saying, there needs to be greater regulation and greater awareness from these companies. But let's be honest, it's probably not going to go anywhere. It's evolved to such a point where our whole, especially during lockdown, that's highlighted it even more. We rely on social platforms. So I don't think they even know where it's going to go, but I think everyone agrees that the effect that it's having, especially on young people, but on our mental health, I think that needs to be looked at in greater detail.
Yeah,
and people need to be held accountable.